Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you Congressman Peter DeFazio from southwestern Oregon. Congressman DeFazio came to Congress in 1986 and has been a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. In the last Congress, he was chairman of the Highway Subcommittee, Surface Transportation Subcommittee, and now, as a result of us being on the other side, he is the ranking member of the Highway Subcommittee. But Mr. DeFazio, we have an active membership organization in Southern Washington and Oregon, and we're very interested to hear your views on what's going on the Surface Transportation Bill and other relevant issues in the Congress. So, thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks. Thanks for being here. I guess just sort of a little perspective. Chairman Oberstar and I had hoped to do a very robust bill in the last Congress, and we were a bit hampered in that the administration really hadn't laid out any policy, and also they were very reluctant to have any discussion over revenues. I mean, it's clear that the Highway Trust Fund cash flow as currently constituted is not adequate, to begin to catch up with the needs of the country. We had the two commissions reports that both came to the conclusion that we would need to spend substantially more just to maintain the current deteriorated state of our infrastructure, let alone begin to bring it all up to a state of good repair, deal with the 150,000 bridges on the national highway system that need substantial rehabilitation or replacement, deal with the 40% of pavement that's in fair to poor condition, deal with the $60+ billion backlog in our transit systems across the country. And when I give speeches about this, I say, the state of the transit system is so bad, we're killing people. And right here in D.C., I mean, the metro, that was because of outmoded and equipment that's no longer essentially safe to operate. So it's a huge problem, and we'd proposed a pretty robust bill. I went round and round with the administration because the president had made a pledge not to tax anybody less than $250,000. So he couldn't do a gas tax, and they didn't want to, and it's also logistically difficult to move very quickly to vehicle miles traveled, but they really jumped on Ray LaHood when he suggested that. So I came up with a couple ideas of taxing oil by the barrel, which is more taxing the producers and the processors and the oil companies. Yeah, sure, they'll pass some through to the consumer, but not necessarily all of it. That could be a good way to go. And finally, in the end, they came around to my barrel tax idea around the beginning of October, just before we left to go home for the election, and said, we want to do that in a lame duck, and we're excited about this. And anyway, never heard any more about that. So where we're at now is the current projections are with no new funding, we can do a $260 billion authorization. That's far, far from adequate. It's less than the last authorization, and particularly when you look at the last highway bill, Surface Transportation Bill, and the ARRA money and the general fund money that we injected. It's considerably less. So I'm very concerned about that. I've been talking to Chairman Mica and talked to Ray LaHood about the idea of indexing the gas tax, and then and they've now given me figures on if they do projections on indexation, and I would like to do it to both construction cost inflation and fleet fuel economy, so that they came up with some numbers. And now I'm trying to get some bond people to tell me, okay, given these projections and these numbers, how much could we bond up front and pay off over a reasonable period of time for this authorization? So that's sort of the one hope of getting more money at the moment. Actually, Chairman Mica is interested in this and has been talking to some of his members and other people about it. Unfortunately, I talked to Paul Ryan, who says absolutely not, no way, it's a tax increase. And I said, Paul, it's not a tax increase. I mean, you're supposedly the economic guru. You got nominal dollars and you got real dollars, and all we're doing is holding the constant with real dollars in terms of the purchasing power. I didn't tell him about throwing in fleet fuel economy. I just talked about construction cost inflation. And anyway, so it's not it's not certain we can do that, but Chairman Micah is somewhat interested. Policy-wise, I'm not sure where we're at all. They pretty much don't seem to want to start with much of, or maybe not even any of what we proposed in our legislation. But there is and historically it's not been a particularly partisan committee, and I'm hopeful that we will be involved in meaningful discussions about policy as we go forward. So that's sort of the broad view. The FAA bill is doing a little better, except now we're hung up. The FAA bill is essentially, except for one little anti-labor thing they had to throw in, they couldn't help themselves, is pretty much the bill that we passed in the last Congress, with the exception of FedEx will still continue to get special treatment so they can be an anti-labor company, but other than that, it's pretty much the same bill. But it's been sitting now in Ways and Means for a couple of weeks, so they have to clear, we have to reauthorize the existing tax structure, and they haven't moved. So we're a little concerned about what's going on over there in terms of potential revenues. Also we didn't get the passenger facility charge increase that we wanted. So there are a few differences which again will diminish the capability of making more robust expenditures, both ground side at airports around the country, and depending on how they tinker with the other part of the taxes, whether or not we can move ahead quickly with the next gen air traffic control system, modernize the system, save fuel, move people more efficiently, better utilize the skies, and all those things. So that's where we're at. We need to just, in my mind, keep pushing the administration on these issues. They should have been a more forceful advocate and should have come around sooner on the idea of the service bill last time. They seem, the president has put forward a seemingly very robust proposal in his budget again, but they haven't proposed any way to pay for it, and that's problematic. We really need some help downtown if we're going to get the kind of expenditures we need to make the investments we need to make America more efficient, effective with its transportation system. I frequently go around saying how until I was criticized by a colleague, saying how we're becoming third world in our transportation system. He said to me, that's really kind of insulting. I said, oh, come on, this is my colleague Earl Blumenauer. I said, Earl, you know how bad things are? He says, no. He says, it's insulting to third world countries. He said that they're spending a higher percentage of their GDP on infrastructure than we are. So I've now taken to calling us fourth world, which is formerly first world, now vaulting over the entire rest of the world to last place, and and falling behind. So it's pretty pathetic. That's it.
Can you talk about transit a little bit?
Sure. There will be probably a fairly robust fight over transit, especially the smaller the bill, smaller the amount of money, the bigger the struggle is going to be. We had a pretty titanic struggle on the last authorization to get the transit split we got. They were it was very begrudging that we got the transit number up just a little bit. We always have problems with certain senators from states that don't have much in the way of transit, that's going to be compounded this time. The highway users are very organized, pushing really hard. That's why I really liked the barrel tax, because when they say, look, people are just paying, truckers paying at the pump, your people are paying at the pump, and this is all road related, is their argument. And of course, there is also another argument to say, yeah, but if we can either just infinitely build roads, or we can try and give people a more efficient alternative way to get to work, which could be transit. So, we have thus far, prevailed in that argument, but it's going to be particularly, I think, on this side, it's going to be a tougher argument this time than it was 5 years ago. But the needs are phenomenal, and like I said, I think it's $65 billion. It's documented, and I always use the example of the city of Chicago and the stimulus bill. I say, they got how much was it? How many? 250 million was it, or three? I don't know.
It was around 250.
Yeah, they got $250 million to deal, and they've got a $6 billion backlog, and they had all the money committed in 30 days because they just got all these projects sitting on the shelf waiting to be funded. And, you know, with the Buy America requirements, this has a huge multiplier effect in our economy. You know, there's really not much of any better way to put people back to work in this country than these sorts of investments. And in the last transportation bill, I got one of those horrible earmark things for the city of Portland, and the city of Portland put out a competitive contract, and a company called Oregon Iron Works has now built the first made-in-America streetcar in 70 years. And now they have orders in 3 cities and a number of potential orders elsewhere. So we're rebirthing industries and, you know, and all the jobs that come with them, and finding better ways to get people around. So I'm a strong advocate, even though I don't have a big transit district. The funny thing going on in my district right now is we had the first small start bus rapid transit project in the country in my district. And the first little segment just ran between my 2 major cities, Eugene and Springfield, and they reached their 20-year numbers in 6 months. Yeah, and, you know. So and then now we've taken the up to our major regional hospital and a big shopping center. Again, this is all on my side of the river in Springfield, where we are a little less contentious than the people of Eugene over things. But now there's a huge controversy over citing a line out to West Eugene, which is a very congested area. And the interesting thing is that Americans, for whatever they are, taxpayer, whatever, the Koch brothers are involved in an anti MX, we call it the EMX. They're running a big campaign against it in my city. It's you know, so it's Americans for Prosperity or something. Yeah. Yes.
Congressman, with the new Congress, do you find that AASHTO and APTA voices stronger, less? They're not listening to you, or how does that play now with you?
Well, AASHTO has been, you know, they're sort of doing a little freelancing from what I understand, because they're out there at this point talking about a 2-year bill and doing some other things. So, you know, I'm not sure where, you know, where they're at. And they also had pushed back a bit against some of the things Jim and I were trying to do last year. APTA has been much better and, you know, more amenable to what we proposed last time than was AASHTO, and AASHTO was coming along kind of reluctantly, and now I'm not sure what role they're going to play or where they're at, to tell the truth.
From your perspective, what can we do to level the conflict?
Well, I mean, there's just, right now, there's got to be a lot of education going on. You know, the interesting thing was we've got 19 new Republicans on the committee, and a number of them are, you know, ostensibly Tea Party types and that, but not a one of them on the first day when they got to speak said, gee, I want to cut transportation investment. They were all talking about how it facilitates, you know, a number of things. And, you know, we've finally gotten, in terms of, for instance, you know, new starts, small starts, we've gotten DOT straightened out on, you know, looking at economic benefits. So that brings in the developer community. And you find, you know, we can bring together really great coalitions around transit issues. I think if, you know, you're looking not only at contractors, but, you know, you're looking at the developers, and obviously you're looking at, you know, with manufacturing. We're just meeting with the so-called manufacturing czar, whatever he's called, yesterday from the White House. And I pointed out to him that actually the transit folks, Peter Rogoff, has done a great job. I was very disturbed to find out in a hearing a couple of years ago that they were given waivers overseas to develop buses and transit vehicles. I said, how can we don't have engineers in this country? I mean, you know, how can we be doing R&D overseas with waivers? And I talked to Rogoff about this, and then I talked to him even more about, you know, talked about what had happened with Oregon Iron Works. You know, we can build this stuff here. And he now has pretty much, they're not granting waivers. And if you're going to get a waiver, they're going to post it on a website, and everybody can look at that website. We've got to get the word out more and see what's up there on these waiver requests and say, no, wait a minute, I can make that here. Don't give that guy a waiver. And, you know, we need to do more of that. And I was talking to the manufacturing czar about it. So, I think there's a great coalition we can put together here in terms of, manufacturing, economic impact, made in America, the development community and all that. And we've got to get those who are more business oriented in to talk to these new members, these Tea Party types, and say, you know what these kind of investments mean for, this city or potentially for this city in your district? And get them hearing from the Chamber of Commerce folks or the developers and others. So that's really where we need to network. And some of you are in business, some of you in government, but that's the place to go. So, okay, anything else? All right. I saw Donna came in somewhere. Where'd she go? There she is. All right. So she's a great member of Congress. I love working with her. So.
Congresswoman Donna Edwards of Fort Washington represents Maryland's 4th Congressional District, comprising portions of Prince George's and Montgomery counties. She was sworn in as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives in the 110th Congress in June 2008 and began her first full term in the 111th Congress in 2008. She serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where she sits on the Subcommittee on Highway and Transit, the Subcommittee on Water Resource and Environment, the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management. She also serves on the House Committee on Standards of Official Conduct. Representative Edwards has enjoyed a diverse career as a nonprofit public interest and in the private sector on NASA's Space Lab project. Just prior to serving in Congress, she was the executive director of the ARCA Foundation in Washington, D.C. During her time at ARCA, she gained national prominence in her efforts to secure a living wage for working people, ensure the independence of the federal judiciary, end capital punishment, protect Social Security, and promote labor and human rights, both nationally and internationally. Representative Edwards was the co-founder and executive director of the National Network of End Domestic Violence, where she led the effort to pass the Violence Against Women Act of 1994 that was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. Representative Edwards completed undergraduate studies at Wake Forest University and received her Juris Doctor from the University of New Hampshire School of Law, formerly the Franklin Pierce Law Center. She is the proud mother of her son, who just recently graduated from college. Let's welcome Representative Donna Edwards.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I'm glad that you're here because we need you, and I hope most of you have on good walking shoes, because we really do need you all across this Capitol talking to new members and seasoned members about the importance of us developing a real transportation policy that's settled policy so that communities and states can move forward on their transportation needs for this century. I think it's actually been a real contributor to the slowness in our economic growth that we don't have a significant transportation authorization in this country. I think it makes it difficult for states and cities and communities to plan. I know that some of those big projects, we have some of them here in the Washington metropolitan area, and I represent the 4th Congressional District, which is, thank you. Yes, I do. I always like to give those props, but the 4th Congressional District, which comprises Prince George's and Montgomery County here in the metropolitan area. And we have some really big projects that we're working on, apart from the basic, surfacing projects and other kinds of maintenance. But for those huge projects that are long-term, that require significant commitment from our state, significant commitment from our local communities, it is impossible to secure those commitments if we don't know what the federal government is going to do down the line. It's important for us to know whether there's going to be a focus on mass transportation that covers the full breadth of our transportation needs. It's important for us to know, are we really going to make investments in high-speed rail like we say we are? And if we're going to do that, and that means that that's potentially manufacturing in so many different sectors across this country, not a single good business person in this world would ever commit to making those kind of changes, whether it's in their facilities or in their securing of products and services and people, without knowing what the federal government is going to do. And so we see this ripple effect throughout our economy when we have this sort of unsettling at the federal level in terms of meeting our transportation needs. Let me just say, particularly for both the private sector minority community that participates in transportation, I know that it has been a tough go. Over this last year, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, members of our Transportation Committee had many, many meetings over the course of the last 2 years with Secretary LaHood, with all of our transportation authorities to say, you know what, we know that states actually can do a much better job in terms of reaching out to the minority contracting community. And some states have been better than others, but there isn't this sort of, you don't see a broad sweep across the country of states that have really made a commitment and localities that have really made a commitment to true diversity in the contracting community. And what does that mean for us? I know that in my state and in my communities that when minority contractors are not involved, it also means that minority people are not being hired. And so it has a real ripple effect all throughout our economy, apart from what that means in terms of meeting our business needs. And so we have work to do. And this is a different Congress than the Congress that we've had in the past. But I have to say, as a Democrat, it disappoints me, frankly, that we didn't reauthorize surface transportation when we had the opportunity to do that. I don't think that we should count that as a success. Now, it is true that we provided a significant amount of stimulus funding, not enough, I think, going into transportation and infrastructure that really would have, I think, resulted in much more significant growth in our economy than we're experiencing now. Now, it is true that we've experienced, 6 quarters of continuous economic growth, particularly in the private sector and on our economy. But imagine, if you will, if we had spent 3 times the amount that we did on transportation, if we had had a long-term transportation authorization that allowed states to make the commitment to those big projects that would be hiring people for a long time and engaging contractors over a long period of time, we might actually see something differently. And so I don't want to leave my own party off the hook when it comes to making decisions that are about really investing in this nation's infrastructure. I know that, depending on the state that you've come from, I know in my own state, we have had an opportunity to pull together some of our minority contractors in our state to allow them to know what contracting opportunities there are to take advantage of, to introduce some of our smaller contractors to the big guys. And we can't let the sweep of all of this, both federal money and state money, only fall to the biggest companies. It has to be really spread throughout our economy. And we know that there are challenges in statute of whether, of what we can designate and how we can designate it, but it doesn't mean that we can't hold states to some sort of standards. It doesn't mean also that we can't hold the Department of Transportation to some accountability of reporting what states are doing with federal money. Exposing that and the transparency of that actually could make all the difference in the climate in states and localities. And so I want to thank you for being here on Capitol Hill today, and leave no stone unturned. If you are visiting offices, don't just visit the offices of people. In fact, don't even come to my office. You don't need to come to my office. There's nothing that you need to convince me of, but I do think that you need to go to some of my neighbors and talk to them and have them understand that there aren't just transportation needs in our metropolitan areas. There are transportation needs all across this country, in small communities, in large communities, in rural areas, in metropolitan areas. There are needs for investing in buses for mass transit, investing in things like our metro system so that I don't know if any of you watched the morning news here this morning, but we have an escalator problem here in our metro system. And why is that? Because the escalators are really, really, really old. And many of them made by companies that don't even exist anymore. And so that is true. That isn't just true here, it's true all across this country when it comes to our transportation. We've seen the reports about the bridges that are crumbling. Some of us have had the opportunity to drive under them, and we're not happy about that. And when you have a transportation infrastructure, and I'll close on this, but my belief is that when you have a transportation infrastructure that is dysfunctional, where the maintenance is falling apart, where we haven't made the investments that we need to, guess what? You're not going to participate in the 21st century like other folks are. And the reality is that in so many countries all across the world, they are making major investments in their transportation infrastructure because that's about competitiveness. It's about moving goods across our roadways and our railways and our waterways. And when you invest in transportation in that kind of way, you create jobs, you allow people to participate in the economy, and you create a robust economy for the 21st century. And so leave no stone unturned when you go and knock on doors. And if you're from Ohio, I want you to visit all of those offices in Ohio. Don't just visit the friendly ones. You're from Texas, believe me, hit every single Texan office, okay? Because we need them on board, and we need them to understand, we need everyone to understand that transportation is not about Democrats or Republicans or independents or Tea Partiers or anybody else. Transportation is about the American workforce, and it's about our competitiveness, and all of us have some skin in that game. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think there might be someone outside of the door. I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, you guys have any questions or comments with regard?
I have a comment, and maybe it's for us more or less to discuss. You touched on the reorganization bill, and one of the components is the commuter tax benefit. That's part of that bill, which has been going up over the years. I think right now it's $230 per employee per month. That has been in jeopardy of maybe going away, and I just heard recently, and I don't know if it's true, that they had just limited to transit. It used to be that an employer that purchased a pass for an employee, they could write that off at the end of the year. It was like a cafeteria, plan. I don't know if that's true, but my point is that if it is going to continue, that is a point that we should maybe try to assist on, because the small businesses, especially our hubs, if they can use that as a fringe benefit for their employees, it could be a great tax incentive in the long run for them and also for the users of our systems.
Okay. That's a great point, Aida. And what I'd like to do, if you can send me some additional information, and I can do a little research myself, and if any of you have any more information on it, and I know at one point when I was with a particular company, I used the benefit, and they did too. And it's very successful. That's one of those things that has been kept under the radar screen, but with it going away, I think it would impact a number of people, and I know it would impact people here in the Washington, D.C. Area. I know somebody runs a organization that works to provide those benefits to different companies throughout the Washington area, and actually throughout the country. So,
just listening to all of the speakers that we've had this morning, one of the things that kind of brings clear to me, what we've had and the folks have come up very knowledgeable about our issues around transportation and infrastructure and all these kinds of things. What can we do as an organization to get that group of people that keep referring to, the newbies and the ones who don't know, in a similar kind of forum for this to talk to them about these kinds of things? Because I know they're saying, at some point, today or whenever, we should talk to those folks, but I think it would be beneficial that not only do we get these folks that we've had, but some of those newbies into the room and ask them questions, or even get their opinion about these same kind of issues, because that's when you get them all together and you're looking at this forum, it may also help us get to the future.
I think it gets back to advocacy and education, and I can't say we can't do this. We can't do this all the time. There needs to be some kind of advocacy or consistent advocacy on the part of Comto and other entities that are allied with us to do that. And again, it would entail putting a strategy together. And I guess as Ledge person, I will take that charge to do that and work with the members of the legislative subcommittee and others to make sure that that happens. So, yes.
And just to your point, if I can make a suggestion, years ago I worked for a think tank across the street, and what we used to do at the beginning of every Congress is we would target different staffers in certain areas, for example, transportation staffers, and we would invite them to a briefing. You can't guarantee that they'll come, but a lot of times if they're a new member or new to that issue, because each Congress, sometimes they shuffle, you know, they'll come just to kind of figure out what's going on and who the players are. And, you know, that could be, it doesn't take, we don't all have to come back. I guess it could be something that you put on or Julie puts on. And, you know, you can offer that at the beginning of the Congress, you know, a month or so after it starts, so that they can have an idea of, okay, what is it? I don't know.
But it would,
Introduce them to Comto.
it would be part of an ongoing effort to make that kind of thing, and I can draft my good friend Gabriel to help me do that as well. So, go ahead.
I was just going to concur. I think we need to be talking to the opposition.
Right.
We know our friends are there, and we had to craft a strategy to talk to the Republicans, the Tea Party, and all those that are actually fighting the members that were supported and have been supported to us over the years. And there is a way to get at them, and we need to come up with the right message, with the right kinds of information to let them know that there's a cost, that there is a constituency within their particular geographic areas, that this is an important issue.
And that's why I'm so pleased that the chairman is supposed to stop by, because again, and I think it's important that you guys ask tough questions. I mean, not, you know, let's talk about that. And again, let's not, well, again, it's the issues that are raised in our paper about holding states accountable. And you know, I don't know if he wants to do that, or I don't even know if he knows about the problem. I don't think he knows the issue, but he needs to be apprised of it and know that we are have strong concerns about it. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, Debbie went to one of his hearings, and so when he comes in, we really need to ask those questions, because the hearings, my understanding is, are not addressing these issues.
Well, the listening sessions were the one that Bruce and I attended. You know, they're very scripted. The people who were there around the table who had already been prescribed to talk.
But hearings are scripted. You have to don't.
Right, I get that.
Okay.
Get that. But went in with a little bit of naivete, thinking that there might be some opportunity for Comto to have a voice. I did end up leaving because I had another commitment, but Bruce said that there was an opportunity for people to get up. I guess the point being that that the opportunities may not always be available for us to speak our message, and we may need to look for alternatives to get the message to those decision makers.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. Good to see you. I have a gentleman from South Carolina who's going to make an introduction.
Okay.
It is so easy to introduce someone who needs no introduction. That being said, I will not introduce Mr. Clyburn, but I will tell you why I'm not going to introduce him. The president says that he is among a handful of people in Washington that when he speaks, everyone here listens. Being a South Carolinian, I would tend to tell you that in South Carolina, when he speaks, everybody in South Carolina listens. He has brought to South Carolina and to Washington a level of authenticity that you rarely find. And you think about when people come and speak to this group and other groups, and you question the authenticity, they really speak to please you, not to help you. He's here to help us, I'm sure. We met in Sumter, South Carolina, his hometown, when they were dedicating a multimodal facility that Ann August runs, and is named for Mr. Clyburn. I'm also worked with the folk down at South Carolina State University, where again, he is named because of his efforts and his authenticity around delivering on commitments that he has made to his constituents. That is very rare, very, very rare among folk who come to Washington with the intent of helping the people who voted for them and who asked them to serve. So with that, I'll say, I'm not introducing him, but I will give you Congressman James Clyburn.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to get a truncated introduction. I wish my wife were here. That's the one that she likes. A minute and a half to do well. Let me thank all of you for your tremendous service and commitment to this great country of ours. All of us have great investments in our nation's future, and we are very, very concerned about where we are today and what the future holds for our constituents. I just left a meeting of our caucus, our Thursday morning whip meetings, and Austin Gooseby, who is the new economic advisor to the president, was with us. And I had the occasion to be the last speaker to offer a few questions and comments to him that I thought was important, which is why I'm running a little bit behind the schedule that you gave me. Now, I know exactly what group this is. I have been with you every year since I've been here, and this is my 19th year. Many of you here are responsible for what level of intelligence that I have regarding your issues. I was fortunate enough to be on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. At the time, it was a Public Works Committee when I first came in the 103rd. And I reached out to Comto, and I became sort of the liaison from the CBC to you. And during the course of those 6 years, before I went on the Appropriations Committee and became chair of the CBC, I got to study your issues very, very well. And I knew them well enough to sit down with then Oberstar, who was a ranking member, as we lost the chairmanship, as you know, after 1994. And your issues were very important to us because the last affirmative action program left in the federal bureaucracy, that is after we had the little battles with the Department of Defense, was in the transportation bill. And we had to try to figure out a way to keep those programs. And many of you may recall, we cut a little deal with the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Bud Schuster, to try and keep the programs. It worked. He got what he wanted, and we got what we wanted. It is call the give and take of politics. We are at a similar juncture today. We have just lost the majority. We have just continued the transportation bill through September 30th at levels that we have been living with for a long time, and that are very, very inadequate for what we need to do in our respective communities. And I think we're at another critical juncture as to what we will be able to do between now and October 1, when we start up the next fiscal year. And so it's a little bit like Back to the Future, Mike. Mike gave me some notes here dealing with Back to the Future, though he got me there on a different route that I'm taking, because I don't think he knew about this part of my background. My question to Mr. Gooseby had to do with targeted cuts versus targeted investments. Now, we have heard a whole lot of talk about targeted cuts. Everybody needs to take a haircut. I mean, those of you who can afford a haircut. I had to let people know I ain't got much hair left. Taking a haircut could very well be more than I can afford. And such as it is with many of our communities. You know, I'm one of those people who say you have to be very careful of what you pray for. A lot of people will tell me that they believe in equality. Everybody being treated equally. Well, I don't. I never have believed in equality. I believe in equity. And I believe that if you treat every community the same way, what you do is you lock yourself into disparities. And that's where we are. And I think that is part of what we must begin to think about, talk about, and interact over, whether or not we're going to have equity in the system. In some kind of way, we're allowing ourselves to get locked into that word equality. I have 3 daughters. They are different. My eldest daughter, many of you know, is here in Washington. She serves on the FCC. She's always been very independent. We used to be in business together. We would sit down and talk about the business plan and what we need to do going forward. She would offer up her position, and I'll offer mine, and being the daddy, I figured that mine ought to be followed. She would agree. Bow her head in agreement, and just as kind and receptive as you can possibly be. And I thinking I've won the argument. I go on back home. The next week, I look at the newspaper. Every damn thing I said was left in the room. And it's exactly the way she argued for it in the first place. She's very independent that way. My number 2 daughter, Jennifer, is 7 years younger, and she's married with 2 children, and but she always calling Dad for approval. No matter what it is she strikes out to do, she's going to call me, and she wants me to give her my advice, and I keep telling her, go ask your husband. I'll give you away. Ain't my deal. She doesn't want to hear that, you know. She and Mignon are different. Now, I've got a 3rd daughter, Angela. Angela, well, she's my free spirit. Whatever comes up, it doesn't matter. We'll just deal with it whenever the time comes. I mean, they're different. And because they're different, I treat them differently. Yeah, I treat them differently. And what we have to do, we have to get our entities up here to understand every community is different. And to say we treat them all the same way is not equity and it's not fair. And that's what I just finished talking with Mr. Gooseby about. I talked with President Obama about it about a month ago. I talked with OMB about it 2 weeks ago. And they tell me that they have accepted and they have bought in to my notion, and some of you may have heard it, the media has now been running with it, they're putting up charts, my so-called 10, 20, 30 plan. And everybody says that sounds like a good idea, but I keep saying it, but now y'all tell me how good an idea it is, and y'all keep sending stuff over here, and I don't see that formula in anything that you're sending over here. They keep telling us why we got to cut this and cut that. CDBG, taking a cut. Community Services Block Grant, Community Action Agencies, taking a cut. Targeted cuts, Pell Grants, taking a cut. And that's all right. But we're not going to be able to move these communities along until we start targeting our investments that we are targeting the cuts. And so infrastructure to me, those of us who have been around this business for a long time, you know, this is, a lot of people say it's housing. It's good. I know that's the quickest way to build wealth, but housing is not necessarily the quickest way to uplift communities. I don't care how many houses you build, if you ain't got good, clean drinking water, then you aren't benefiting the community. You can build a house as fancy as you want to build it, but you got to have roads and bridges that are appropriate to get in, to navigate these communities. I've seen some pretty houses sitting down in Orangeburg County, outside of Holly Hill, that when it rains, they have to park their cars and walk 2 miles back to the house. I have seen that. I'm not telling you anything that I think. We've seen that. And so what we have to do, and what we tried to do with the recovery package, we tried to say, hey, let's invest in the infrastructure. Not that anybody wants to build a favorite road or a bridge to nowhere. What we would like to do is sure put people back to work, but we want to know when the work is over, we want those communities to have been improved. We want the people to have safe drinking water. We want people to be able to navigate in their communities, throughout their communities in a way, and doing that while growing the economy. Now, we lost a big portion of that battle over infrastructure. Y'all saw what came out. We went in with around $990 billion plan. We had a big infrastructure program in it. The Senate diced it up, spiced it up, sent it back to us. And it was down somewhere around 700 and something billion. $200 billion in infrastructure taken out of the plan because they said, well, the public ain't going to be able to swallow that. The public was going to be against anything we did. And so that was not a good deal for us, but that's what we did. So here we are now, trying to figure out how to move forward and do so in such a way that we will meet the needs of our communities, transportation needs, the water, sewage needs. How do we do it? I maintain, and Mr. Gooseby, to his credit, when I started to talk, he mouthed, before I ever said it, 10, 20, 30. They liked the idea. Now, why they will not make it a part of what they're doing, I don't know. So I'm sharing it with you. Now, I want to tell you what this is all about, and I want you all to do a little research on it. What we're saying here is that there are communities across this country that over the last 30 years, 20% or more of their population have been locked beneath the poverty level. Go and check. Most of you probably know what the government poverty level, the federal poverty level of a family of 4. Check it and look at your communities. Now, I can tell you about South Carolina. We have 46 counties in South Carolina. 15 of them have been locked beneath the poverty level for the last 30 years. That's 1/3 of the counties in South Carolina. 474 counties in the United States of America fall in that category. 474. These are not black counties unless you're in Mississippi and South Carolina and Alabama. If you're in Kentucky, West Virginia, they're Appalachian counties. And it may shock some of you to find out, go to your dictionary when you get home and look up the word Appalachian. How many of you know what it means? It doesn't mean mountainous. It means white. Look it up. So Appalachian means white. If you go to South Dakota, Alaska, it's not white nor black. Native Americans. You go to Arizona, New Mexico, it's Latino. If you check the political representation of these counties, you will find that 2/3 of these counties are represented by Republicans. 2/3. Only 1/3 of them are represented by Democrats. So this is not a partisan issue. It's about poverty. It's not a color issue. It's about community. And we're going to have to really get people to focus on this. So you all do the research, and you're going to find, you don't have to do the research. Just go on my website. Because I've already done the research. And it's there. I went up to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Chairman Rogers. I went over to him on the floor. I said, Mr. Chairman, this is something that you really ought to take a look at. Now, the reason you ought to take a look at it is because you got 24 counties in your congressional district. You got 24 counties that you represent, and 23 of them fall in this category. Go check it. Go on my website, it's there. So the point I'm making here is, just like we were able back in 1995 and 6, with the reauthorization of T21, we were able to change the discussion. And it wasn't about affirmative action for black folks. We were able to show where keeping the affirmative action program was of benefit to this country and of benefit to the political climate that we were operating in. That's how we were able to do it. And I'm saying to you today, we're going to have to face up to the realities that we're faced with now. Let's don't let them put us in a box. Let's look at your communities, your programs, what needs to be done. And I'm going to close with an answer and a question you may have. I don't know what here's another thing you got to look at. You got to look at some of the history of your communities. Don't just get caught up with the numbers as they are today. Look at the history of these communities and see how they got here. I'm going to give you a good example of that. I've been in court now for a little over 10 years about a road and bridge that I've been wanting to build. Now, I've been sued by my environmentalist friends. Now, we've been sued because they tell me that if you put a bridge in this area, it will ruin, it would be detrimental to the environment, and it would be threatening to wildlife in the area. Now, never mind the fact that we've done an extensive environmental impact study, and the EIS says no detriment to the environment, no threat to wildlife. But they hold on to that notion. They said, because you're going to disturb about 11 acres of wetlands. And they're right. And the reason they're right is because of the new definition of wetlands. Wetlands today were ditches when I was a kid. I'm not making this up. They were ditches when I was a kid. In the area that we're talking about up there around Lone Star and Remini, in the area we're talking about, back in the day, before they had a congressman that would represent their interests, when they wanted the roads to be paved so that they can get to their houses without parking their cars and walking for 2 miles, they went out and dug ditches to be drained, to drain the road, and they did all the paving over in the white neighborhood. So over time, those ditches have been there, and now under the new classification, those ditches are now wetlands. Now, in order for me to build a road that I want to build and put the bridge in that needs to go in, we got to cover up those ditches. But no, they aren't ditches anymore. They're now wetlands. I mean, there's a classic catch-22 if you think I'm making this up. I'm not. Classic catch-22. And so look at the history of what you're doing. Look at these communities. Find out when you see these oppositions, because I can give you chapter and verse putting water, safe drinking water. Anybody else here from South Carolina outside of you? Well, then you may not know anything about Schuylerville and Snowden. Snowden is a little community between Charleston and Mount Pleasant. Now, those of you who go down to Charleston, you go down, Charleston's a pretty city. Right. I like Charleston, it's in my district. Snowden is not. But Snowden is where 300 slave families moved to right after the Civil War, and they've been living there ever since. But they don't have drinking water, or didn't have, until they got a congressman. Though they're not in my district, they came looking for water. And when I tried to run water to Snowden, they objected, my environmentalist friend objected. Because they said, now if you run the water line there, it will entice development. I'm not making this up. And very soon you're going to have sprawl. So I started doing some research. I do this kind of stuff. I started doing some research, and let me tell you what I found. I found that a few years earlier, a developer wanted to put a mall right outside of Mount Pleasant. Those of you who go down there, you probably have shopped in this mall. So in order to build a mall, he needed water. So they didn't want to develop new water. They decided to do a contract with the city of Charleston and purchase their water from Charleston. So in order to get the water from Charleston to the new development in Mount Pleasant, they had to run the pipes through Snowden. I'm not making this up. Go check on charleston.net, put in the Post and Courier, that's the newspaper there, and then put in Snowden. And it'll pop up and you'll get the history of this. So I said, wait a minute. So you're telling me that it's not attractive to developers. It won't contribute to sprawl if you run a water line through Snowden, but it's a problem if you run a water line to Snowden. It took me 4 years of fighting them. And one of my environmentalist friends made this statement. Well, they've been drinking that water for 200 years, and they seem to be doing fine. I'm not making this up. This is the kind of mindset we have to deal with, and we're going to have to fight on, don't fight unprepared. Do the research on these issues and make sure that you carry the argument. Yes, I beat them. Now they're still mad. But I tell you what, there are 300 families that now got water they can drink. They can cook with it. So what we're going to have to do is really get ready to fight. Because you pick up the newspapers every night or morning, turn on your TV, and our opponents are ready to fight. They are fighting. We better put on our armor. Now, you know, I was born and raised in a parsonage, and so we used to sing a song when I was a kid. Put on that armor. You know, I know it's all about Christian soldiers. But we got to be soldiers and get ready for it, because between now and next year this time, we're in for some fights. And let's get prepared to do battle. We got to do it. Can't be nice about this. You got to do battle. Thank you so much. We got some votes on?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Congressman, you will always be our majority whip. Can you just get some members around here and get a photo before you?
Sure. Sure. All right.
Come on, you guys.
Oh, Miami. Yeah.
You better go to front row.
Well, the shortness got some advantage.
Well, so you know about us now.
Here behind you.
Okay, I'm okay. I'm not gonna stand in front of this lady here.
Looking tall, looking tall.
And Congressman, while we're taking the photo, thank you for the final rule on the DBE program.
Everybody right here. Everybody gets 3 shots. It's personal. Hold that. Excellent. And one right here. Okay. And last one, give me your biggest smile. Hold it. If you're gonna say
Brother Baker,
touch his hand.
very good. I think we have to go one up here in Pittsburgh.
Hey, Rusta.
Excuse me just a moment. I neglected to mention Julia when I was talking. Oh, thank you so much. In fact, you who I was talking about when I was saying how intelligent you made me look and sound. But thank you so much for your work. Okay, then.
Thank you, Congressman.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.
Everyone, we're graced by the presence of another one of our Comto leaders, Congresswoman Corinne Brown. And first of all, before we start, I want to ask you guys to give her a clap because she and her staff were the ones who helped us get this all together today. So. We thank Ronnie and Rashawn and Stephanie and all those guys on their staff for being so helpful to us today. So,
morning, Comto. My mother. That's what we called her in Jacksonville, Mother Corinne. Corinne needs no introduction. Anything you want, Jacksonville wants, Corinne gets. When Corinne speaks, everybody listens. And that is true in Jacksonville, and that is true in Washington. She's been a long-time congresswoman here, and she represents our district very well. We are very proud to have my mother, our mother, Corinne Brown, as our congressional woman. And let me give it my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Corinne Brown.
Good morning. Good morning. I wish that was true. The slogan is Corinne Delivers, and that sounds really good, but I got to tell you I'm really upset right now because we did deliver almost $3 billion to Florida for high-speed rail. And I have an article for you because the governor turned it down. That would have been over 60,000 jobs. And of course, you know your part that you would play in that. I mean, we have a 12 to 15% unemployment. Now, let me just tell you something. 90% of it was federal funds. The other 10%, we had 8 different companies that wanted to participate and wanted to partner with you. We're talking about the Chinese, the list goes on. So it was 100% funding. So it was not a question of funding. The project was 81 miles. It was going to go from Orlando to Tampa. Well, why did the 8 companies, why would they guarantee over $300 million? Say if it's any cost overrun, anything, why would they? Because they wanted the piece from Orlando to Miami. Everybody knew that's a money deal. And my office is bringing it over to you because I want you to see the study that the governor did not release, but we paid for it, the federal government, so we have it. The study showed it would have been a money maker the first year. So why would you turn $3 billion back? Okay? And money is not the issue. And the man won with 48% of the vote. So the point is Corinne doesn't deliver because we did not get out and vote. I mean, you know, he didn't win. I mean, if we just had a larger group of us to go out and vote. And if you look at it, all of the minority programs, he said he's cutting out. That's what I want him. The minority supplier money, when I first got elected to the House of Representatives in Florida, we got money for the black colleges for the first time. He said he's cutting all those programs out. So what I'm here saying is elections have consequences. Do you understand? You can't tell me why you would turn down $3 billion except you don't want to see that construction going on in 2012. It's all about Barack Obama. Has nothing to do with unemployment. And the fact is, I mean, it's unbelievable how you could turn down that money and those opportunities and that work because of Barack Obama. So the man went down to Miami last Friday. That's when he called the secretary who gave us 2 weeks extension to just try to get some some sense into this man. But you can't confuse people with facts if they don't, it's not factual what they're saying. I don't want the state to be on the hook in the future where the cities came together and say, we'll take it. The city of Orlando, city of Miami, city of Tampa. But the only thing the governor had to do is just say, well, okay, you all do it. He said, no, nothing for Florida. So that money is going to go to California or some other place. So this is an example of what happens, not just for everybody, but this is what happens to minority programs, because he is committed to wipe out all of minority programs. What's the name of that program that the minority suppliers?
Yeah, there's still some confusion about that, but it's a minority suppliers program down in Florida.
Okay, but the federal government funds a part of it. So I'm going to make sure that he can cut out whatever programs, but all of it that has any federal dollars, then we're going to redirect that to minority businesses or colleges to make sure those services continue to be provided in Florida. But to me, this is a true example of what we're going to get if we don't get active, if we don't get involved, and if we don't vote 2012. That's all it is. Pass out those, you have it? I wanted you all to see the study and a note about what's going on in Florida. And of course, it's not just Florida. With that, I am going to continue to move. We're having a hearing on next Monday in Orlando. And I want to make sure that I'm going to have someone come and discuss the minority portion, because of the rail. We want to make sure that when we do the reauthorization, that the minority piece is in there for rail. We're going to have a rail tile. We want to make sure that the minority piece is in there, because it's in all of the other transportation, and we want to make sure it is also in rail. And so with that, I can open it for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for your leadership and your involvement and your support. But this is an example when we are not involved and when we don't work, what happens? We take 2 steps back. Any questions?
I have a question, Congressman.
Yes, sir.
Because the governor turned down the money for the high-speed rail, is there any way that there could be some kind of private consortium that money can bypass the state and go to and get the project accomplished at the same time? Well,
I just told you the 3 cities have come together, and they wanted to be the conduit to get the money. So, and then they was going to contract with private to get the work done. But the governor says, no, I don't want the money in Florida, period. So the question, the attorneys are in the room as we speak. But I think that Florida is going to lose out on 90% funding from the federal government. There is no other project in the country that was 90% funding. I went to Salt Lake City, Utah 2 weeks ago, and they got commuter rail. They run 40,000 people a day. They got $300 million that we turned down in Florida about 3 or 4 years ago. And so they have it in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I was told that the Secretary of Transportation Friday was in Carolina. I was talking to Mr. Mel Watts, and he said he think he gonna get part of that money. So my colleagues from California, they said, well, how do you feel? We're gonna sign a letter saying we want it. I said, go ahead. Because what I want more than anything, yes, I wanted Florida to be first, but more than anything, I want us to have high-speed rail in this country, and I want the president to have it, because it will change the complex of how we move people and goods and services in this country. If you go to Europe, you fly in, you get on a train, and you go all over Europe. You can go downtown Paris to downtown Brussels, 200 miles, 1 hour and 15 minutes. Can you imagine what it would have been like to go to Orlando, and then you can get on a train and go to Miami in less than an hour and 15 minutes? What would it have done for economic development and the energy and the international travelers that's used to doing it? People fly into Miami, they get in a cab and say, Orlando. They don't have a clue. Yeah. You say you did it too? Oh. Yeah, but see, people don't understand. I was talking to the Chinese, and we had a big conference up here, and they've called me even since then. They say, money not problem, we put up money. We talk about, they say they'll put up the whole $3 billion. If we had a recall, and we're going to have to put it in Florida, we would recall him. And we're still looking at it. Because if money is the issue, then what is the issue, folks? If money is not the issue, do you not want to do the jobs, the economic development? Yeah. So it has nothing to do with, I don't want the state to be on the hook. And his slogan is, let's get to work, let's get to work. Well, you got to have something to work on, Mr. President, whatever your name is. He spent almost $100 million to become governor, his money. Now, I may be exaggerating. Maybe it was $80 million. $80 million on the table. I don't know how much he spent under the table. Right. Okay, so, and then he says, well, I'm a businessman. Well, he had to pay over $2 billion back to the federal government for stealing Medicaid fraud, the largest payback in the history of the United States. So I don't know what kind of businessman he is. And then the key is, he is a governor that don't care about his people. We got 12% unemployment, and these are all kinds of jobs, not just construction jobs, consulting jobs, and they want to partner. To me, it is a travesty for the state. It is really a setback for Florida, and everybody knows that. So the question is what we're going to do about it. But I want to share that with you because you need to know we're not just facing this in Florida. We're facing it all over. And so it is very important that we educate people and we get out and vote, or else we're going to have setbacks in every state. It's his first term, his first 2 months. And I want you to know, for the first time ever, when he was giving his state of the whatever speech, it was demonstrations all over the state. First time, good thing. Yeah, people are paying attention, all right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Congresswoman, first, thank you so much for your continued support on transportation, particularly transit. But my question is, if money is not the issue, why is it always the issue in terms of the Republican propaganda? I mean, it's all about cutting the budget, our deficit. It's too much spending. Here they have 90% funding, they have 10% private investment, public-private partnerships, and yet there's a whole different conversation about the same issue.
Well, let's go to the broader issue. What happened is Republicans very good at rhetoric. I mean, when you would have thought that all of the problems that we have in this country, that President Barack Obama caused them. Now, we all know in this room that's the hand that he was dealt. In fact, when we did the first bailout for the banks, I personally voted for it, and Bush was the president. Well, Corrine, why would you vote for it? Now, let me tell you something. I had to be convinced it was a real problem, because I was one that was definitely willing. Everything Bush sent, as far as I'm concerned, was dead on arrival. So, but I talk to people all over the world. I talk to the French, I talked to English, and we were not only taking all of us down, we was taking the world down. And the banks. But what they told me was for every dollar they lent them, they had to lend it to a small business or somebody. We didn't put those stipulations on the money. And not only did the banks not do that, they started calling notes. Your business, oh, we don't want to be in that. If you had a restaurant, or if you had a small business, or if you had a shopping center, the bank said, well, we don't want to be. All they doing is buying up other banks. So it's been a real struggle with the banking industry and trying to get the credit out. And so, you know, some people, so that has been one of the major problems in the foreclosure, and how to get your hands around how to solve that problem. And part of the problem, okay, we sent money to, let's say we sent money to Texas. Texas, we sent them $3 billion for education to help not lay off teachers. The governor of Texas put it in the rainy day fund. Right? Yes, you know I'm telling the truth. Put it in the rain money. Well, we're suing them to get that money. That money was supposed to help generate, to pay teachers so you wouldn't have to lay them off. Now, the new governor said I would have never taken that money, but our past governor took the money and employed teachers and firefighters and police officers. We did that all over the country, but the president got no credit for that. Now it's running out. And so they're cutting the budgets. So what I'm saying to you is that this was the problem that he inherited based on Bush 2 wars, that drug bill that he gave all that money to the pharmaceuticals that I voted against it. When I knew my grandmama needed the medicine, but he put a provision in there that the secretary, it would be illegal for her to negotiate the price of the drugs. Well, I'm on Veterans Affairs. We make Veterans Affairs and Department of Defense negotiate the price of the drugs to keep the cost down for all of the military people. The chairman, let's give him a hand. We work very close together. The chairman, no, I don't take no prisoners. And we work very closely together, and it's a real pleasure working with him. And we work very closely on getting these projects into the state of Florida. 90% of the funding that the governor's turned down. He's just as heartbroken as I am. I want to hear what he has to say about it. Give him a hand.
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and also, we're teasing a little bit, but I must tell you that Corinne and I came to Congress together. We have done many things together. We've had a few disagreements. Just, you know, I've been married 39 years, and you have a little spats here and there and disagreements, but I think we both have the same interest at heart, and that's doing good for folks. And you know, there's a time for the elections and the campaigns and beating each other up politically, but in fact, we stay away from that. We stay out of each other's campaigns too, which is another thing that sometimes folks don't do. But it is important to reach across the aisle and try to get things done for the folks we represent. And a lot of folks we represent are hurting. Probably the minorities, you know, they're always at the bottom of the barrel, and they're getting kicked down again. They hurt even more by the worst recession since probably the Depression. So it's even doubly important that we get some things, positive things done. I'm saddened that we don't have more people working. Mr. Oberstar was my predecessor. Ms. Brown was chair of the Rail Subcommittee and now is the leader on that committee on her side of the aisle. But we tried to get twice as much money. Well, we wanted even more money for stimulus, for transportation. And then the other thing we wanted to do was get that money out there. I mean, you all deal with the federal government and forms and paperwork and all this stuff they throw in front of you. It's amazing anything can get done.
And that's something that I hope you can help me in changing. But we could have had a lot more folks. I had a bipartisan agreement on a 6-year bill with Mr. Oberstar. He got his legs cut out from him, and now we're paying that penalty. Now, unless you've been on another planet, I don't know if you noticed that there's a lot of conservatives that came to Congress, people that don't want to increase taxes, that want to get spending under control. And I think they have an important mission because we are going down the tubes financially. And my dad used to say when he was living, it's not how much you spend, it's how you spend it. So you got to spend it wisely. And I have no problem in spending it on infrastructure and on good projects. I really kind of sad Corinne talked a little bit about the high-speed rail failures, Florida. Well, that is very sad. I'm one of the strongest proponents in the country. I wrote the PREA Act with her. She was chairman, and I put the provisions in that bill for high-speed rail. She worked on a good piece of legislation, which we got Bush to sign, believe it or not. And it had safety provisions, and it had some reform. It was the first passenger rail reauthorization in 11 years. But we got that done. And we set up some provisions for going forward with high-speed rail. Now, the money came before the provisions were considered. And unfortunately, folks, and the Obama administration is no different than the Bush administration. I argued with them when they got discretionary money, went behind closed doors, and spent it on projects that weren't going to float. They did exactly the same thing with money, and I gave them holy hell about it. But now the sad part about what's happened with the projects that were picked and the failure in the rail projects is that it makes it all look like it's bad, and it isn't. You gotta do the good. And I see quite a few. Here's Maryland and Boston. We've got some others from the Northeast Quarter, Pennsylvania. Of course, there's others around here, but I've been a strong advocate of getting high-speed service in the Northeast Quarter, which would change the whole dynamics of this quarter from here to Boston. It's the only quarter that Amtrak owns. They own that 600 miles. The rest of it, they're running trains over 22,000 miles of freight privately owned rail, and they get into conflicts, and some of the projects they've chosen have now come back to haunt everybody. But that's a temporary setback. I'm the kind of person that figures out a way to do things, and even when you get a setback. Let me tell you about the bills, two important bills. One, the FAA bill, which I authored the last bill when I was chairman of the FAA Aviation Subcommittee in 2003. That expired in 2007. We've done 17 extensions of that bill, which means basically we don't have the policy, the projects, the funding formula. And if you all are interested in doing business and getting people working and jobs, well, I'll tell you, that is no way to do it. And we passed out of committee a bill. The Senate, and I went over and begged them to take it up. They not only took it up, but they passed it already. We hope to mesh those the end of this month, the beginning of the next month, and I hope to pass a 4-year extension of FAA within the next 60 days. So that would provide some stability, and the aviation industry accounts for 9 to 10% of our GDP. So that's something I need your help on, people. There'll be a few issues, but we're not going to do 17 extensions and leave you all hanging and the whole country and industry hanging. The second thing that we've got to do is a long-term transportation bill. It needs to be 6 years. I've told folks, if you want to talk about less than 6 years, I'll take you outside and beat the crap out of you. But it is important that we do a long-term commitment. Okay. When I came, again, I have to sort through the debris. I've only been chairman. There's no operator's manual. I just came in. I inherited the debris, and I'm sorting through the rubble here. We did 6 extensions of the. It's traditionally called a highway bill. I don't like to call it that. It should be a comprehensive transportation bill, and that's what I intend to have. But they did 6 extensions. It expired in 2009, in October of 2009, and here we are. No one knows what to do. States can't even get contract with you. It's short-term little things. They're uncertain of what the federal government is going to be as a partner. So last week, there have been a couple miracles. Jesus was born, and then last week, the second miracle, we passed a extension of the transportation bill through October 30th. Now, that sounds like a easy feat. The new conservatives in the majority have been taking down suspension bills, which means they're non-controversial because they're not cutting or trimming enough. So what we did is, the 6th extension was in the CR, the continuing resolution. The transportation extension was in that resolution. All the projects in the country would have expired for transportation last Friday, or they could have been stuck in going till, the 18th, and then beyond the 18th, now they're talking about 2 or 3 weeks. So we would have been in continued turmoil. You wouldn't have been able to go to anybody and say, can we get some business, can we do some business, because the states don't know, the locals don't know, and the feds were in confusion. So we ended some of that uncertainty, and it was a small miracle to get that plucked out and passed and signed by the president, but that's done. Now what we're doing is I've been holding hearings around the country. I'm coming to groups like yours. Mr. Oberstar operated in a different way. Ms. Brown saw it. He'd been here 32 years. I'm a new kid on the block, even though I look old. And Mr. Oberstar had written his bill all out. I have no bill. I'm asking you, I'm asking others. We're bringing in, like today, secretaries of transportation from around the country to sit down. I asked the former Florida Secretary of Transportation to come in, go through the current laws and redline them. This doesn't make sense. This is red tape that could be eliminated. Take this out so we can do stuff, make projects work. So we want to enlist from you what you want in the bill. I'm going to announce in a couple of days, we'll have stakeholder hearings the last week here of the month. I just told staff, because we've been out in the country, but I want everybody here too to have an opportunity. And from all these good ideas, we'll put that in. It'll be your bill, and then we'll move forward, I hope, on the floor. Maybe we can develop the bill in April together, get it on the floor in May. I've reached out as far as you can across the aisle. I started the first hearing in Beckley, West Virginia. How many of you been to Beckley, West Virginia? That's the home of Mr. Ray Hall. He's the Democrat leader of the committee. I did a bipartisan, bicameral hearing in Los Angeles about a week ago with Barbara Boxer. She's my equivalent chair in the Senate. Ms. Brown and I are going to do a hearing in our backyard on Monday in Orlando, 9:30. But and I've got a few more we're going to do. We're going to do some in Pennsylvania, do York, and wherever else we need to do them. Then again, stakeholder hearings the end of the month, you can participate. So it's an open process. If you got good ideas, bring them forward. I've got Nick. You all met Nick, and Nick works with Corrine Brown, and you get those ideas to him. Jim Timon's back there. Jim works for me. He's the staff director of the Highways Subcommittee. So get those ideas to us, and we'll try to incorporate them. But it is an open process. And if we can do that, we get a long-term bill, we can get people working again, and some definition because you want to go and get folks working and get projects moving and be productive, not get excuses from us. So that's why I came to see you today. I need your help. Ms. Brown and I can't do it by ourselves. We've got to get it done with everybody on board. So thank you so much, and hopefully there won't be any unfriendly questions.
Mr. Chairman, we have one question that I
Okay,
know that
good.
we have some concern over. So,
Good.
Debbie.
Debbie Wilson, thank you for being here. I'm the Hub Advisory Disturbing and Utilized Business Advisory Council Chair for Comto. And so I represent the voices of the many disadvantaged business enterprises who are members of Comto and who may not be members of Comto, but who are trying to have access to opportunities with USDOT and other federally funded, USDOT federally funded projects. One of the things that we are particularly concerned and interested in helping with is what does accountability mean in terms of the changes that were made to the DBE legislation. What exactly does that mean? Is there something from the federal level that might be established as a framework for transportation agencies receiving USDOT funding to follow as sort of the core principles or metrics? Or will the agencies receiving the funding be allowed to determine what the framework and the template might be? We'd like to help with it, so it's a question, but it's also a...
Well, what I suggest is you give us your suggestions. We'll look at them. If there's been a problem in the definition of accountability here, sometimes by the time they get through with you, it's amazing you can do anything with all the restrictions, rules, and definitions. I like as much flexibility as I can so that the job can get done. If the definition of accountability needs to be revised, give us your suggestions. I have, what do they call it, a tabula rosa on all this. I don't have any axe to grind. I know I can't increase taxes. I've got to find more creative ways to raise revenues, and I have a whole host of ideas there. More revenues too, and creative ways, and let you do what you do best. People won't be arguing over getting scraps. The fight now sometimes is to get scraps off the table, and that shouldn't be the case.
Okay, we'll definitely offer our
Okay, good. Get it to Nick or Jim.
Okay.
Great. And that's what it's about. One more quick one. Yes, sir.
Real quick, Walter Island, California, small businessman. A lot of the transit agencies are cutting back right now.
Yeah.
And so gas prices are going up.
Yeah.
So there's going to be greater demand for transit use.
Uh-huh.
And how are we going to deal with that on an ongoing basis and not raise the gas tax?
Yeah. Well, again, I've got to find more creative ways to do projects. And when I get to the finance end, I've got to stabilize the trust fund. I won't be able to increase taxes, but I probably could stabilize the trust fund. The second thing I can do is look at money all over the place that isn't being expended. I still have stimulus transportation money unfunded. I have accounts with lots of money in them. I have a $35 billion RIF, Rail Infrastructure Finance, sitting there. It's not used. Let's make programs work that don't work. We've got TIFIA programs, and I've had discussions with the Senate already and others. They work fairly well, but we can make them work a lot better. Change the terms so that they can be used for more projects. Leveraging Garvey bonds. I have gotten beat up when I said revise and build America bonds, but I can take some programs, maybe they've been too generous, revise them and make them work so they aren't too as generous or criticized. So I've got to look at all the means of financing. Transit's an interesting one. And I'm a big mass transit fan. You're looking at a right-wing Republican who thinks that you can't get a better deal than moving people by mass transit. But the project has to make sense, and there are many projects that make sense. We get, you get a bad name because there's a few bad projects chosen here and there, or not successful projects. But we've got to find the successes, make sure they work. Big believer in intermodalism, multimodalism. It's all got to fit together. Trying to get the administration, do a success in the Northeast Corridor where we own it, and others will model it. Bring in the private sector. Government doesn't have, I refer to Amtrak as the Soviet-style train system. People don't like that, but get away from that model. Bring in the private sector as a partner. And some people say who are with unions and all, well, Micah's trying to do it. I said give the unions every opportunity they have now. Do not change it in any way. These are going to be union jobs. They're also probably going to be jobs with under prevailing wage and all of those things. That's going to stay. I mean, you're not going to change that. Come on now. But what you can do is expand. When I came to Congress, Amtrak had 29,000 employees, and I've been after them because they've got so many problems with operations. They're down to 19,000 employees. I brought the Amtrak guys in, and I said, is that your future, to look at less jobs? Could you imagine doing real high-speed rail in the Northeast Corridor and other projects? You dramatically increase employment, and they'll all be union members. They'll all get better wages. But look at alternatives that do work and bring in solutions that are positive. We can also get some capital from these people who have capital invested in these projects. So don't look at just protecting the little bit of diminishing turf we've got now. Look to the vision of the future with Miss Brown and me, and you'll do it, damn it.
We don't agree on everything.
Don't anybody use it for target practice. I know, yeah. Her, yeah. She's in town next week or
Yes,
something.
she is.
How many are you going to get in here done?
As much as we can possibly get away.
Nick, make sure you get Miss Wilson's recommendations. Miss Wilson, you know Nick? Make sure you get him those. All right, good.
All right. You do know we don't
Otherwise-
agree on Amtrak.
What's that?
We don't agree.
You'll agree with me. I'll get it going.
Okay, we have to swing a little bit, congressional members, you stay where you are. Y'all swing a little bit around to you all's left.
Well, we'll go. Come on, we got
No,
to
you want to stay where you are.
Okay.
How can you do that? Okay.
Couple guys, if you can swing.
Oh, well, you want to come behind us?
Some behind us?
There's a couple of tall ones. The tall ones are always put in the back or kneeling in the front.
Now, for those who are vertically challenged like myself, make sure you can see me right here.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Everybody, oh, that's great. Okay, right here, hold it.
Comto help bridge the aisle.
There you go. This is a good looking bridge. Hold on here. Hold it. And one more. Good smile. Hold it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Good. My pleasure to be with you. Hey, guys. Think outside the box, guys. Oh, good. Good to see you. Hey. And tell Linda I said hello. I saw she's coming here. From where? Oh, yeah. Oh, great.
And we are the Central Florida
Daniel's has some good
Washington, New York. We gotta get you guys on board. Flying.